Thank you. I'm Dr. Will Hickey, and I'm a former Fulbright professor, and I've been doing work in regards to blockchain and intergovernmental policy, and for the domestic policy and usage of the blockchain. Now, I've just heard some very good inputs from Ms. Patachuman and from Mr. Rakesh Singh, and I was not prepared to make sidebar or additional comments, but I wanted to say a few things about what they talked about. It was very interesting before I get into technical blockchain. If I may comment about SME. Small Business Administration in the US defines an SME as less than 500 people. Now that may seem a lot to you in Thailand, but that's how it is officially defined. I heard a lot of talk about changing generational mindset, and that's extremely important. We have old generation and we have new generation, and trying to get an agreement between the two is critical for acceptance of some of these policies. Now, I spend a lot of time in Hong Kong, and I think you know that many of the conflict there is caused by generational difference. The older people identify more strongly with China. The younger people identify more strongly with Hong Kong, being Hong Kong Chinese. So I'm familiar with the discrepancy right now. Mindset. Changing the mindset is key. Do you know most people now have enough computing power on their smartphone as the entire Apollo 11 moon program? Think about that. 50 years ago, the entire Apollo 11 moon program that went to the moon did not have as much computing power as you have on your smartphone. That's just something to consider. E-commerce, I'll talk a little bit about that. Execution. It's so key to getting things done. There's many plans. And I had the opportunity to study at Harvard University under the creators of the Balanced Scorecard, Robert Kaplan and Dr. Norton. And what they always talked about, it's not about checking boxes for the Balanced Scorecard, it's about execution. That's what matters. Another thing I heard today was education and skills, how important they are to get to acceptance of our new digitized era. As we know, the world is overloaded now with information. Analyzing the information is the key to success. The thing I really enjoyed from Rakesh Singh was linear versus exponential. Many of the old businesses and governments think in linear terms, but change right now is driven exponentially, especially with the blockchain. Change is being driven exponentially. That means it's too fast for most government and for older businesses to quickly absorb. They don't have the speed. The younger generation does have the ability, but again, we have generational conflict. So much of this is political and changing the mindset in the organization. All right, with that said, let me begin. Okay, let me look at the last one here for you, right there. I studied under Porter for competitiveness, the Harvard Business School, and I also studied with Peter Senge at MIT in regards to systems feedback. The harder you push on a system, the more it will push back. That's what Senge teaches. So we have to develop the system where we get to acceptance, not to pushback. Michael Porter at Harvard talked about cluster competitiveness, which I studied closely. Cluster competitiveness is going with your winners to success. That means countries like Malaysia, for example, may not be benefited by developing the proton car. They may be benefited by focusing on other things, like processing and refining palm oil. So that's something to consider. In any economy, you should go with your winning bets. Trying to develop new and competitive industry is great. However, who are you competing with needs to be recognized. That is the Porter theory, basically. And the last point here. The presentation is on SME development of domestic policy. Got it. Domestic policy using blockchain on application. This talk is not about IT. It's not about coding. It's not about software. I have limited experience with that. My area is blockchain and policy, and how do we get this applied so people can use it. The presentation follows three general forks in understanding as follows: an overview, a blockchain application, and blockchain and future policy. Now, if you studied blockchain, you know a little bit about forks. You have to create a body of work, a body of data. And the only way to change that body of data is you create a new fork. You create like a fork in the road. You have to go a different direction. That's a technical term, but it's important to understanding what the blockchain can and cannot do. So what is the blockchain? Well, every day, billions of commercial transactions take place as people globally connect both physically and virtually through the process of buying and selling. The blockchain platform can create an integrated marketplace built on the sharing economy, which is what we're in right now. You think of Airbnb, you think of DD, you think of Uber. This is all the sharing economy. That is basically optimizing excess capacity that we have. An optimization of excess capacity. Now, there are several factors that are under that would be too long to discuss. One of the things I'm focusing on that allows this to happen, the sharing economy, is cheap energy. Cheap energy fuels a lot of the sharing economy. If you take that away, suddenly the sharing economy can become more expensive. I just want you to keep that thought. So, where individual customers, local businesses, and delivery agents, these are the community drivers, we share in the rewards and responsibilities. So what is the blockchain exactly? The blockchain is the decentralized accounting mechanism, which underpins, it proves all Bitcoin calculations on an encrypted ledger due to its power in creating a foundation for future transactions. In other words, gigantic data storage. And it started with Bitcoin. Bitcoin was founded by Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know if that's a person or a group of people. In 2009, Bitcoin was the tradable commodity, the token, if you will. Underneath that, the protocol was the blockchain that supports it. So, understanding Bitcoin has some merits, but understanding the blockchain is more important. Blockchain is the technology that underpins these transactions. Blockchain technology was first developed to provide an alternative approach to payments by using cryptographic methods to provide an alternative to trust mechanism between two transacting parties, P2P. Basically, what we have today is person, bank or government institution, and person. You have that intermediary. And what the blockchain does, it effectively removes that intermediary. And this gets into other implications then about banking, about governance, about institutions. How necessary are they in some cases? What is their function if the blockchain is working as it should be? So what can the blockchain do? It can record births, marriages, deaths. Take this out of here. Property ownership, business contracts, and a variety of other records traditionally created and held by governments. A usurpation of traditional business is the real issue we're looking at. We're looking at radical change and incorporating the blockchain behind this change for data storage and data access. What is blockchain really about? Trust and continuity. The consensus between parties creates the trust needed for them to engage in personalized transactions. The identities of the parties on the network can be established definitively via their exclusive digital signatures. When you access or use the blockchain, you're doing it through exclusive hashmark signature, if you will. In turn, these individuals can sign and verify transactions themselves. The trust can be used for what we call the P2P, person-to-person sharing, if you will. There's no need for a third party, such as a bank or a government office, to officiate and referee the transaction. That's the ideal. Many students have asked me, well, how can you say that? We always need the government. You see, changing the mindset to one of a P2P transaction, person-to-person versus the intermediary, is very difficult. Now, many of the younger generation get it, but a lot of the older generation don't get it yet. The idea is that the information that you have is cryptographically coded, so that information goes to another select person or entity. It's secure via the blockchain. The blockchain cannot be hacked. It would take so much work to hack the blockchain, you'd be better off creating another blockchain. Why is that? Long streams of data code. Too long that the chances of it being hacked are very infinitesimal. Now, you may have heard about Bitcoin hacks. Bitcoin hacks are not the same as a blockchain hack. In a Bitcoin hack, someone gets into the wallet or the storage area where the Bitcoins are held. Since Bitcoins trade freely, if they steal the Bitcoin out of the wallet, then it is effectively a hack. It's a wallet hack, but it is not a blockchain hack. Continuity is about keeping an assured account of where objects are. That's what people want to know. They want to know where is their data. Now, I have this microphone. If I take this microphone and put it behind my back, you see my left hand had nothing, but you're very certain that it was in my right hand. There is certainty. That's called continuity. If I move this microphone behind my back, everyone here is certain that it's in my other hand. That is continuity of data, and that is what the blockchain can provide. Let's get to a real example. People say, well, none of this makes sense to me. I want to know, how does the blockchain have utility? Right there. That's the utility. A very simple example. The current system of banking risk versus the blockchain ideal, if we're going to talk about a risk period. For example, collateralization. If you're going to put up collateral for a loan, if you go to a bank, they look at your last collateral update, then it goes through an inspection period before things can be accepted and the loan will be granted. A long period of time. This could be weeks, it could be months. But if we utilize the blockchain, this very simple diagram shows that the distributed ledger model can lower the margin of risk to a very short time. Maybe days, maybe minutes. Now, what I'm talking about is this information going through the approval process. The old way of the approval process is you create a file, you submit a file to a banking office or a government office or a tax office, and they review it. With the blockchain, it's more instantaneous. The information, the data is right there. What about Bitcoin? Why am I still talking about Bitcoin? Because most people, when they think about blockchain, still think about, you're talking about Bitcoin, you're talking about cryptocurrencies. That is fintech. That is the first generation of what the blockchain's utilization is for. We're now getting to the second generation, and that is integrating this into other businesses, as I will show you. We're still in the early stages of building and developing the technology underpinning the blockchain and its uses. It's critical that practitioners understand and refine the economic, the behavioral, and technical design criteria for these new systems to create legitimacy, not scandals. Now, I know people hear a lot of things about Bitcoin still. Hacks, theft, illegal transactions, tax evasion. These are all things associated with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and by extension, the blockchain. But trying to change the mindset to move beyond that is what matters. Blockchain application. Now, this is important to close the gap. When addressing blockchain, programs or educational materials are either at a very high level, superficial discussion. I like the blockchain. I like Bitcoin. I don't like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the way of the future. A lot of high level, very superficial talk. People don't really know what they're talking about. And then the other extreme is low level and deeply technical discussion about IT. With IT and equations that people don't understand. So the idea then is to bridge the gap between the superficial discussion and the IT discussion. Then we can get to the application. Learning experiences such as these don't cater to the needs of business leaders and executives who have little need for technical knowledge, but require enough understanding to guide organizational decisions in an applied fashion. You've got to apply this stuff. Not just talk about high-level ideas or IT code. How can we actually apply this? Blockchain links information digitally through a summary of the hash function, allowing information to remain intact and traceable from inception of any product or service to its current state. In other words, try to visualize this. Students ask me, how do I visualize the blockchain? I put it this way. Look at the blue sky and picture a gigantic Excel spreadsheet across the sky. And every transaction that can be digitalized, photographs, accounting, etc., can be placed on that blockchain from inception, from the very original development of that product or service to its current state. That is the storage power that is now available with the blockchain. We're not talking about megabytes or gigabytes. We're talking about terabytes of data storage. Anything that can be digitized can be placed on the blockchain. Anything. Photographs, records, birth certificates, passport copies, marriage licenses. We are creating a legacy storage of objects and services where you have a complete record. Now, this has big implications, especially in regards to corruption, fake products, certification of products, authentication of products. That's a very general schematic. Probably some IT people would argue with me on this. but I'm not presenting an IT code. I'm just trying to give a general schematic of what the blockchain is. It's a proof of work consensus where the blocks of data are linked together. Each one has a hash that is linked to the previous hash. Each one has a timestamp. On the blockchain, you can verify when a transaction happened. Exactly. We can go back to that. It's all ledgerized now. The blocks together create a perfect audit history of all transactions of an object or service. That's what you want. Remember, I showed you continuity when I moved this behind my back. Continuity is what the blockchain provides. Now, that's not an original inception for me. Who did that come from? McKinsey Group. The McKinsey Group, the consultants, noted that an important ideal behind the blockchain is the entire issue of continuity. People want certainty. They want to be sure that what they're buying is real, that it will serve their needs, that it's authentic. The continuity that the blockchain can provide is what people like about it. Example. You go to a government office and you file your documents, and they're on file. So you think. I can tell you some stories about government offices and documents, especially in other countries I've been in. Now, much of the time, the information will be there. But sometimes we have a saying, things get lost between the cracks. Something sits on someone's desk. Something is misfiled, and they can't find the original information. Then whose problem is it? Is it their problem? No, it's your problem. The blockchain mitigates that error. If it's on the blockchain, you're not relying on people to put things in file cabinets, people to make long-term decisions. An example, one of the countries I live in, getting a work permit, for example, requires many ticks from different government offices. And I learned if you don't pay extra money on your application, guess what? It doesn't get done. Now, there's no way to trace a lot of that stuff. That's a lot of human interaction. What the blockchain does, it makes it more scientific. If the money is paid, it goes to the next step. You don't have to wait on someone in the process to make a decision or move it along. You can go back in time and see a former state of the database at an exact timestamp. Exactly where we were when we dropped off those documents. Exactly where we were the next day, the next hour of those documents being processed. That's important. If recording things like property titles, one can see all previous owners of the property, provided they were previously recorded, up to the current owner, the current state of the property. Very crucial in land acquisition. Who actually owns the property? It's a big issue in Asia, Thailand, Indonesia, Hong Kong even. Who actually owns this property? And you have to go back through file cabinets and see, does the person have a real claim on the property? Is it a quit claim? Is it a simple deed? Are there relatives involved? It can get quite complicated and can get quite muddy. The blockchain basically assimilates that information in data format. So there's some key terms. DAO is a digitalized autonomous organization. DBVN, digital-based virtual network. A token. What is a token? A token is when you use the blockchain to create a artifice of value. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, any coins, any ICOs you see, these are all tokens. You can create a token using the blockchain for anything. What is a token? A token is I create something of value. It could be a service, it could be trading electric, It could be trading oil. My token then can be traded freely between someone else. When the token is given to them, they assume the ownership of what that token represents. Now, problem. Cross-border issues. As I mentioned, what is the legality of some of these tokens? An example probably can pertain to your EGOT, your Electrical Generating Authority of Thailand. Many developing countries, only the state-owned electricity provider can sell electric. Let's say I'm in China and I create a token for electricity and I want to sell you electric in China. Using the transmission lines, I'll get it to you. Can I legally sell you that electric in Thailand? Big question. This is what I work with. What is the legality of tokens cross-border? If they're traded as money, do they need to be taxed? Can they be taxed? Forking. Think of when you come to the end of a road. Which direction do you go? This is the issue with blockchain. When you reach a consensus of work, but someone wants to take the idea or the proof of work in another direction, you have to what they call fork the code. That means change the code. And you build a parallel ideal, if you will, to what you're representing. Block size becomes another issue. Each block can hold a lot of data, but it can't hold all the data, so the blocks must be tethered to other blocks. That's why when we take a block of data and we chain it, it's called the blockchain. That's what it means. Blocks of data that are chained together to promote continuity. Distributed, decentralized network. I'll show you a picture of that. Permission versus permissionless systems. The way the Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are designed, these are permissionless systems. Anybody with the code, with the data, can access them to do transactions. That's permissionless. Permission systems are what banks are trying to do in some cases. Create their own in-house blockchain, if you will, that does not have an outside influence. It's only inside that organization. I have some issues with permission systems because they're not as transparent, which defeats the purpose of the blockchain. Smart contracts. Smart contracts are a great ideal, but smart contracts are not perfect. You can meet all the terms on the contract and they execute. But again, we get to quality issues, we get to legality issues. Ethereum. What is Ethereum? Ethereum is a cryptocurrency parallel to Bitcoin that was developed to process more transactions quicker. Bitcoin, for example, has a limited number, and it's slow in moving. Ethereum basically said, we want to create more digital currency, and it has a more complex code behind it. This is important for SMEs. System D economy. I'll show you what that is in a moment. Now, this is a traditional top-down organization. You have the CEO and you have the workers down at the bottom. Things go downhill. There's many layers of management involved. And there's one legal entity for employment contracts, etc. Everything follows this way. This is the old thinking, the old generation. Trying to change to the new thinking is what is decentralized, if you will. Users can go right to exchanges, can go to developers, can go to miners, back and forth. You're not dealing with a centralized legal authority. You're dealing with each other. You're dealing with P2P. Of course, until now, most of blockchain has been used for fintech and reducing the size of staff in banks, more automated transactions. Okay, this is a decentralized and distributed system. These are all what we call nodes. A node is a computer terminal, if you will. You're accessing the data. This is where it's centralized, where all the information goes through a centralized point. It's controlled. This is decentralized. And this is decentralized and distributed. That's the ideal. This is what you want. People communicating freely with each other on the system about transactions to create P2P. Your opportunities with blockchain then beyond fintech, beyond bitcoins and Ethereum then, are as such. Law. Packages, I mentioned that. Diplomacy. Insurance. Social services. Security. Each one of these can be backstopped, can use the blockchain. Blockchain has paved the way for exciting and innovation solutions to legacy problems. Smart contracts further enable us to solve complex tasks with relative ease. A legacy problem is, where did something originate? If you say a legacy problem, what was the origin of that? Is it on record? Is it just a story? Has it been corrupted? A legacy problem is, where did something originate? We call that provenance. Provenance. Where was the origin of that product or service? A decentralized autonomous organization whose bylaws are engraved with the immutable tools of mathematics and logic is the evolutionary next step in organizational governance. That's P2P. Imagine a future where politicians, corporations, and any other organizational construct are held to the standard, the expanse of a digital autonomous organization demonstrates. In other words, not people making individualized decisions so much as the mathematics and the data proving calculations. Now, that might sound a little bit far-fetched, but the reality is when you're dealing with people, you get a lot of subjectiveness. There's a lot of humanness involved in that. And that's okay, but you don't want to get involved with subjective decisions when you're dealing with property rights, for example. It should be black and white. There should not be gray areas. As we can see, the blockchain is powering new payment trails, storage of land title registries, and mechanisms for trading, settlement, and clearinghouses, smart contracts, and new frameworks for identity and data sharing. Much of this is still ideal, especially in many developing countries. But guess what? Blockchain is made for developing countries. Many developed countries, like the UK, the US, France, have a long legacy of institutions to authenticate and prove things. Many developing countries, especially those coming out of a communist background, do not have that same legacy. Things have changed. They can leapfrog. An example, phone lines. In Western countries, cell phone adoption was slow because most houses and offices had a landline phone. The institutional framework was set up for landline phones. So digital penetration with cellular phones was not as fast as in developing countries where many people did not have that landline phone in place anyway. They went directly from having no phone to having a digital phone, a cellular phone. In other words, they leapfrogged that technology that is set up in many developed countries. The same with the institutional frameworks. Politics, as usual, defines so much of everything, even the best of intentions. We pivot back to Bitcoin as a prognosticator of blockchain. What was the idea behind Bitcoin? Well, I teach this in finance. People are tired of fluctuations in currency values, what we call fiat currencies. The Malaysian ringgit, the Indonesian rupiah, the Chinese renminbi, these currencies go up and down in value. If you're holding the currency and it starts to weaken, you lose money. The idea behind Bitcoin then was to create a borderless currency. If you listen to most of the economists and financial experts, what is everybody concerned about? Exposure to dollars. Dollar exposure. Dollar gets stronger, their economy suffers. Dollar gets weaker, their economy is booming. So this goes back and forth. There's talk now, they want to develop a world currency. And what I write about is politics will preclude that. So the original idea behind Bitcoin was to create a borderless currency. But in so doing, the inventor also created borderless methods of doing other things. Cases of blockchain for the developing world. Ricardo owns a house in Peru. He is old and desperate to get the home deeded, but due to corruption, can't afford to pay the bribes. Therefore, that is a legacy problem. Who really owns that property? No one knows. No government agency will certify that until bribes are paid to certain officials. The blockchain mitigates that, removes that problem. A mobile phone salesman in Laos who can't open a small back office company due to red tape and time. What could he do? He could create a token of the value of his business to buy and sell cell phones with people who trusted him. Another issue, a Buddhist family living in a country with strict Islamist Sharia laws. They avoid the courts. That's a lot of subjective interpretation based on religious issues. The idea then is the blockchain can codify the laws exactly to avoid some of these subjective legal interpretations. That's possible uses of the blockchain for developing countries. I said I would mention System D. This is important for the SME development. System D is the second largest economic system in the world after the US economy, totaling over $10 trillion. System D has proven in need of relief from government oppressiveness around the world, with most of their transactions occurring off the record. In other words, this is the underground economy, and you want to bring those people into the economy. There was a banker in Bangladesh started microfinance, Yunus. He won a Nobel Prize for it. The problem with microfinance is it's too small. It only impacts a small number of people, and it's very small money. The idea behind microfinance is good, but the blockchain can allow more people into the system. That's the idea. You want to get people out of System D and get them into the real economy, not the hidden economy. Why is that? Well, startup businesses can profit from that, that's one. You would also have better tax collection. If you have better tax collection, you'll have better economic growth in the society. You'll have more transparency then in some of these systems. Less abuse of the system, less abuse of people. Are there limitations to blockchain? Yes, big limitations. Scalability. Scalability means you can only process so many transactions at a time. One of the ideas behind Ethereum, the other cryptocurrency, was you can create the blockchain base and make it bigger. The problem with the blockchain base, though, it's still slow. Picture it as a giant spreadsheet, like a mountain. Trying to move that mountain is very slow. Another issue is Because the blockchain powers so many transactions and data updates, it requires a lot of electricity. Blockchain is an electricity hog. It relies on cheap energy to make it feasible. Forking is another problem. You can't go back into the blockchain and change things. Once it's on the blockchain, it becomes permanent. That means immutable. That means it can't be changed, can't be hacked. Once a record is digitalized and on the blockchain, it can't be changed at all. So what do you do in that problem? You have to create a new blockchain. You have to create a fork off the old blockchain. Now, if you take something like project management generally requires a lot of changes. You're building something, and suddenly you see that it's not good to put a door there. The door should be here. If the plans are on the blockchain, they're not easy to change. You have to create a new blockchain to incorporate those changes. However, problems become an opportunity for the SME. Place of origin, manufacturing, transport, and retail. You can put the true label on fake or bad goods. In other words, another limitation is the blockchain is only as strong as the people recording the information from the origin. If the information is fake from the beginning and it's placed on the blockchain, then you will have a history of fake information. So how do we mitigate that problem? One way is through alliances. You have a group of actors in a trade or an institution who basically keep an eye on each other when they are certifying or establishing the product. That means no one will lie. If someone lies, the others will say, "You're lying." The idea is you want it recorded truthfully. Some SME examples. Tracer is a company that works closely with De Boers to certify diamonds. Now, I'm sure you're aware that in Africa, there's a big controversy with blood diamonds. What are blood diamonds? They're diamonds where people were forced labor, or beat up to mine the diamonds in many African countries, and then the diamonds were washed. I don't mean washed with water, I mean washed legally. They took the diamonds, for example, in Sierra Leone, they transported them across border to another country that stamped them and said, "These diamonds were found here." Well, that's corruption. No one wants to buy blood diamonds. They're considered taboo. The idea is to rid these diamonds out of the system. Tracer developed a digital platform using the blockchain in regards to legacy for when the diamonds were mined, timestamp where at, when they were processed, timestamp where at, when they were recorded, timestamp where at, to follow a legacy of the provenance of the diamonds to final market. That's the diamond registry, how they do it, if you will, how they register the diamonds. All transactions are verified and the data is stored each step of the way. The final output is a diamond certificate. The diamond certificate has a barcode that can be traced to the blockchain, which verifies the authenticity and the provenance of those diamonds, where they came from and who used them. You don't want blood diamonds in the system. At least most people don't. They're considered a product of corruption. I know it's hard to see, but this is the blockchain code of each of the data blocks in the chain of the provenance of the diamond. They use a lot of photographs. They use many photographs of the diamond, different pictures. Each one of those photographs then is uploaded to the blockchain to create a history of that diamond. The diamond certificate then goes along with the diamond to prove its authenticity. And when it's traded with the barcode, it is updated in the system to show who currently owns the diamonds. It's constant updating of the system. Organic food. Right now, there's a lot of consumer choice, and there's a lot of SME opportunity in the organic food business. Food safety is a big issue. Food security is such an important issue in many countries that the blockchain can be utilized to track its direction. Increasing complexity in the food chain. I spend a lot of time in China. One of the main issues with food security is the use of pesticide. The use of pesticide, and is that being controlled for? People don't want to eat a lot of chemicals. It's going too quick. The blockchain solution for organic food is centralized storage. Information can be tampered with if you have bad actors. In other words, let's say you grow tomatoes and they use a lot of pesticide. If you can get people to agree that these are pesticide-free and put that down on the legacy record, you can get around the blockchain. It's only as good as the inputted data. That's a bad point. Sometimes there's poor information flow. How old is this fish? How old is this vegetables? No one really knows if it's been sitting in a truck for a while. So the blockchain solution to these is decentralized storage. Information that cannot be tampered with. And smart contracts when the food is actually delivered. Sorry about the timer. IBM has a platform that you can subscribe to as a farmer, as a vendor, where you can trace not just food but different things. The blockchain as a service protocol. IBM is putting this out there. It's very simple to use. It's something to consider if you are a vendor or working with farmers or agriculture, which is a big part of Thailand, in regards to getting your products on the blockchain in regards to verification, continuity. This is the master data that you can put on the blockchain. You can collect the business transactions, verify the events, have a certificate, upload the data when things are delivered or transferred, and then sign off cryptographically on these. I'm going to go past these for time. The IBM platform is very easy to use for small businesses. So it's not that I'm recommending IBM, but I am saying there are platforms that are developed for small business integration with the blockchain. IBM provides one of those. You can subscribe to it, and they will keep your data on their servers. That data is uploaded continuously as you make the changes along the way, or as new information is added. Okay, Let me talk a little bit about blockchain and logistics. According to McKinsey and Company, allowing the blockchain to track shipping data, preventing fraud, blockchain is anticipated to save $50 billion annually within the international trade. At its maturity, it will likely serve as a $500 billion annual savings to the logistics industry worldwide. In fact, blockchain allows packages to be sent and received with nothing more than a barcode. Using the blockchain, you don't need to address people. You don't need to know who the buyer is. The buyer does not know who the seller is in many cases. Objects and services can be transmitted with just a barcode using the blockchain. That is the ideal. Again, we have legal issues where governments say, no, you can't do that. You have to have a sender and receiver. For example, when I'm in China, I mail letters to my home country and I use the sender address and the receiver address is the same. China says, no, no, you can't do that. You have to have a local address on the envelope. That's the law. You cannot mail a letter in China to another country without a local address. So if I use the blockchain for logistics and I'm only using a barcode, theoretically then that would violate Chinese law. So you see where we have the blockchain ideal with logistics, but the legal is different. The last mile problem is probably the most expensive issue in logistics. What is the last mile? The last mile is getting the product or service at the right time to the person. It's not always instantaneous. We look at this. An order is sent to a center. A carrier driver is dispatched with a package. The package is delivered even if the customer is not at home. They leave it on your doorstep. Well, what can happen? Someone can steal the package, or it can be delivered to the wrong house. You don't know, you're not at home. This is the last mile issue. The order was dispatched, sent out to the house, but the people aren't home. They're at work or wherever. The last mile problem of getting the product or service actually to the people with an agreed time is the issue. Paka is a company that is working with the blockchain to use tokens to deliver and receive packages. Blockchain and the sharing economy, each disruptive on their own, were combined to create a decentralized platform for consumer schedule evening delivery 7 days a week. You go to your terminal and say, I'm home now. That information on the blockchain is dispatched to a delivery person who then delivers the package to you. What do I mean, delivery person? You look out on the roads here, right? There's a lot of cars. There's a lot of capacity. There's a lot of people with time on their hands who would be more than glad to deliver a package to your house at a specified time. That is utilizing the sharing economy with the blockchain. The bottom line with the Paka delivery service means that idle time and assets are being utilized. What the blockchain does is it puts the information out there that you're home now and you want this package delivered. Well, you're not relying on any one vendor like FedEx or DHL. The tender can be put up to anyone who has tokens or an escrow of tokens that they will guarantee delivery of your package to you. If they don't deliver the package, they don't collect the tokens. Again, when you think of tokens, you can think of money, if you will. This is the Paka logistics scheme using the blockchain. It's coordinated with basically any driver, any delivery person that's on their ledger. It is coordinated with them. You're not relying on FedEx. You're not relying on TNT. It is a system similar to Uber and Airbnb and Didi, where anyone with a car can deliver the packages. Well, how do you know they won't steal the packages? Tokens. They have to invest a certain number of tokens with the system, and they will not be paid until you actually code in that the product, the barcode, was delivered. Then they can collect their tokens. There's an escrow function to this. Escrow means basically money put on the side to guarantee the delivery and the ownership of that product. That's PACA using the escrow. And this is on the ledger, if you will. It tells you exactly with the timestamp where the package is, and you may have been seeing this along the way, but remember, the difference is when you see this today, packages are delivered through a central unit, like a FedEx or a TNT. What PACA does is it empowers any driver who has an escrow account with them to deliver your package, like Uber or Airbnb. That's the difference. You say, well, I see this today. That's true, but it's generally with DHL or one of the delivery companies. What is the SME opportunity in the last mile? First, the last mile is broken and can't adapt its current methodology fast enough to accommodate the onslaught of daily packages flowing through its channels. Second, consumers are frustrated and dissatisfied with the last mile in its broken state that results in missed deliveries and stolen packages. Third, there's unused space in local businesses, in neighborhoods across America, and the world for that matter. And finally, this is key for SMEs, there are drivers willing to trade their time to earn extra income in exchange for making deliveries. Think of all the cars out there with drivers who would like to earn some extra money, but don't know how. Sharing economy. One of the big things, Indonesia, Singapore, is Grab, is Gojek. People delivering food, for example, delivering packages, delivering people for a ride. I don't trust the safety of some of those applications, motorcycles, but the fact is, in some of those countries, there are a lot of motorcycles. Can we access the extra capacity to add value? Bitcoin and all cryptocurrencies are tokens. However, not all tokens are Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. PACA has developed a token. What they're trying to do is get it accepted among people to use, so they will deliver the packages and provide the escrow function. Escrow just means you have money on deposit. So if you say, well, where do I get this software? Here are some platforms. These softwares are available and can be used by SMEs to engage and integrate with the blockchain. Corda for financial services, Bolero for legal services, IBM Blockchain Platform for food logistics, Stellar. This is important for logistic payments and simplified token creation where you can use drivers and things like that to guarantee packages. Again, we're talking about logistics and Corda. Why bother using Corda? Finality. Corda is the system where you can get the legal issues resolved around much of the blockchain. Is it legal in a certain place? Let me just sum up then. What is the future? We have to get to critical mass using the blockchain. Many people don't understand it. But again, I go back to what I tell my students. Think of the blockchain as a giant spreadsheet across the sky with any transaction that can be digitalized on that spreadsheet. That is your historic reference with an exact timestamp for everything that occurred with that product or service. If you have that type of data storage, that promotes continuity of an object or service, whether it's packages, whether it's property, whether it's bitcoins. The entire issue of continuity. Again, continuity. People want to be sure that the object or service is certain. However, challenges present opportunity for SMEs. As I pointed out, consider diamonds, food logistics, or food, organic food, and logistics. All SME opportunities. Let me give you a final coda on this. Coda means to sum up a reality check. Elite groups and elite interests have always controlled political policy. This is the history of the economic world. Political policy and economic policy are mirror opposites. This is proved in fiat money, if you will, and the money, the currency we use. If elites can control the blockchain and cryptocurrency on their terms, the people who are driving the car, if you will, of government, acceptance will be quickly realized. If not, if the government is opposed to it, it will be harder to realize blockchain adoption. Bitcoin may or may not last, but the blockchain will. The blockchain came out of Bitcoin. But Bitcoin, it's uncertain its future. But the blockchain's future is certain because of the data storage ability and the continuity of that data storage. The issue then becomes one of tokens and their legality acceptance. How will they be taxed and/or institutionalized? Yes, you have the blockchain. Yes, you have data storage, but you have to create something of value out of the blockchain. That is generally encapsulated in the form of a token. A token is the object of value that blockchain creates that can be traded between two parties, P to P, without a government, bank, or institutionalized intermediary. Again, that is the ideal. I've demonstrated to you how some SMEs are using that. Hopefully you'll consider it in some of the things you want to promote with SME development. A final thing I just wanted to say before you go to lunch. An ideal I'm working on is melding the blockchain with 5G technology. What is the main problem with that? Too much computing and storage power. People may not know how to handle it. We get into the entire issue of driverless cars, if you will, and other things. Combining, the next stage would be combining the blockchain with the 5G technology. Essentially, combining tremendous data storage with super speed computing power. Wow, that's a lot to think about. I don't think some societies are ready for that. It might be too much power too quickly, but that will be the next phase. The blockchain then, in real time, as opposed to the scalability issues it has with updating the transactions. Thank you.